All right, let's just dive right into an incredibly specific and honestly fascinating piece of extraterrestrial world building from Ryuho Okawa. We're looking at an explainer of the book Soul Readings of Space People. And today, well, we are unpacking a section entirely focused on a very unique entity, the Martian chicken. Yep, you heard that right. We're going to examine the taxonomy, the psychology, and the historical impact of an egg-laying, highly intelligent soul from Mars.
So, Chapter 2 of this text presents a really bizarre and captivating look at the cosmic origins of human souls. It poses a pretty provocative question right out of the gate. Are you really an Earthling? Specifically, resuming in on what the text describes as a Martian with a god of war role. The book refers to them as Subject B. So let's explore this incredibly fascinating lore.
This brings us to the core premise of Subject B's soul reading. What if Japan's legendary Tengu are actually alien chickens from Mars? I mean, it's a wild concept, right? A lot of us know the Tengu from Japanese folklore, those formidable, long-nosed mountain goblins. But this text is proposing that these mythical figures are actually earthly incarnations of a very specific alien soul.
Part 1. The Martian chicken form. Biological and spiritual taxonomy.
Now, the text lays out a precise breakdown of this entity, and it's absolutely crucial we don't get the step numbers wrong here. Step 1 is their Martian origin. They come from the red planet. Step 2 is their distinct chicken-like avian form. Step 3, they are oviparous, meaning they reproduce by laying eggs. And Step 4, tying the whole shebang together, they possess a vastly superior, highly intelligent nature.
So the real takeaway here is that despite the unusual avian exterior, we're dealing with a being of immense intellect. You know, you hear chicken-like and egg-laying, and you might immediately picture a simple farm animal clucking around. But the source really wants us to understand that this physical form is just a biological vessel for an incredibly sharp, strategic, and aware consciousness.
Moving on to Part 2, the roots of the Tengu, earthly manifestations.
The source explicitly claims that these egg-laying Martians are literally the original basis for the legendary Tengu here on Earth. Think about the traditional imagery for a second. The wings, the beak-like faces, that deep connection to the sky. According to Chapter 2, when these Martian souls actually incarnate here, their spiritual DNA manifests in these bird-like characteristics, eventually becoming the famous goblins of legend.
And this brilliantly illustrates the stark contrast of their existence. Over on one side, you've got their extraterrestrial biology, chicken-like, oviparous, Martian. In isolation, that almost sounds mundane, doesn't it? But then consider their earthly roles. They don't just become passive creatures pecking at the dirt. They become Tengu, gods of war, and historically massive warlords. The alien form is really just a shell for a spirit that is absolutely destined for combat and leadership.
Let's dive into Part 3, Pride, War, and Warlords, a psychological breakdown.
The text outlines 3 fundamental driving forces behind these beings. They have an immense sense of pride, fierce competitiveness, and a historically belligerent demeanor. That strong sense of pride basically ensures they naturally command authority wherever they go. The intense competitiveness means they literally never settle for a loss. And that belligerent nature, well, that implies an innate, almost hardwired readiness for conflict. These aren't just learned traits. The author is saying they are inescapable characteristics of the Martian soul itself. Now, because of their literal, bird-like origins, they also possess a broad, strategic perspective. The source uniquely calls this a bird's-eye view. This is exactly where the physical form perfectly meets the psychological function. Think about it. A chicken or a bird-like entity naturally views the world from above, taking in the whole grand picture rather than getting bogged down in the tiny details on the ground. The author suggests this physical trait translates into a huge cognitive advantage for these souls.
This wide-angle vision of the battlefield positions them perfectly to assume roles as warlords. When you take that intense Martian pride and combine it with this bird's-eye strategic intelligence, you've basically got the perfect recipe for a military tactician. They can see the flow of battle, anticipate enemy movements, and command from a position of absolute oversight. It's pretty wild, but the text suggests that many of the great tacticians of our past were actually drawing on this deep extraterrestrial intuition.
This direct cause and effect shows how alien biology fundamentally dictates earthly dominance. Their avian mindset, that inherent need to look down from above and survey the entire landscape, directly translates into their destiny as warlords. They assume these commanding roles because their Martian, bird-like souls are quite literally built for oversight, high-level strategy, and ultimately conflict.
So, we're going to leave you with this provocative thought from the source material. Think about the great conflicts of history for a second. The text really challenges us to look beyond standard human motivations and consider, was Earth's history actually shaped by the pride of an alien chicken? Whether you view this as literal truth, a spiritual metaphor, or just a fascinating piece of sci-fi world-building, the logic used to connect a Martian entity to a Japanese god of war is undeniably captivating. Keep questioning the origins of the stories we tell, because you never know what you might find.